When the sun dipped behind the suburban houses of Willow Creek, the neighbors still remembered Mr. Richard Thompson as the man who always waved with a smile. Richard was 71 years old, a retired high school history teacher, and someone who lived with remarkable kindness. He loved sitting on his porch, talking about American history, and cheering for his grandchildren at their soccer games. To the outside world, he seemed perfectly fine, but what his family didn't know was that his evening habits were quietly hurting him more than his age ever could. On a crisp October morning, Richard's daughter, Emily Carter, drove over to check on her father. She had promised to bring him a batch of her homemade blueberry muffins. But when she opened the door to his home, she found him still in bed, motionless, gone peacefully in his sleep. At first, the family believed it was simply old age, but when doctors spoke with them later, they explained that his passing wasn't just about years lived, it was about habits. For bedtime practices, to be precise, that became dangerous once he crossed into his 70s. The news broke Emily's heart. She had often reminded her dad to take better care of himself, but Richard, being old-fashioned and stubborn, often laughed it off, saying, "I've lived through tougher times, sweetheart. A few late-night snacks or TV shows won't hurt me." But they did. His passing became not only a family tragedy but also a lesson, a story that Emily felt compelled to share so others could learn what her father never knew. Emily and her younger brother, Daniel, decided to sit down with Dr. Susan Miller, a local physician who had treated many elderly patients. They wanted answers, and Dr. Miller gave them something far more important: education. She explained in detail the bedtime routines that might feel harmless but carry serious risks for older adults. The first was heavy nighttime eating. Richard loved his late-night sandwiches. Turkey, cheese, mayonnaise, sometimes even a glass of whole milk to settle his stomach, as he called it. But as Dr. Miller explained, digestion slows significantly with age, and lying down right after a heavy meal increases the risk of acid reflux, disturbed sleep, and even breathing complications. For someone over 70, this habit can be especially dangerous. Emily remembered the nights she called him and heard him eating at almost midnight. She never imagined it could cost him his health. The second harmful habit was staying glued to screens before bed. Richard was an avid fan of old Western movies. He often kept the TV running late into the night and sometimes even dozed off with it still blaring in the background. The blue light from television screens and cell phones disrupts melatonin production, the hormone that signals the body it's time to sleep. Without proper deep sleep, the body cannot repair itself, and the heart is placed under unnecessary stress. For older adults, this can make the difference between waking up refreshed or not waking up at all. The third problem was neglecting hydration. Ironically, Richard avoided drinking water at night because he hated getting up to use the restroom. Many seniors make the same choice, but dehydration silently harms circulation and can increase the risk of stroke or nighttime blood pressure spikes. Emily shook her head as Dr. Miller explained this. "Dad always said he didn't want to trip in the dark going to the bathroom," she whispered, remembering how her father joked about saving himself the trouble. He thought he was protecting himself, but in truth, he was increasing his risks. The fourth and final bedtime danger was ignoring nighttime medications. Richard sometimes forgot his evening prescriptions, brushing it off by saying he would catch up in the morning. But certain medicines, especially those for blood pressure or heart regulation, must be taken on schedule. Skipping or delaying them can leave the body vulnerable when it is already resting at its lowest state of alertness. This, Dr. Miller revealed, may have been the critical factor in Richard's sudden passing. Hearing these truths devastated Emily and Daniel, but it also gave them a sense of mission. They couldn't bring their father back, but they could honor him by sharing his story so other families could take precautions. They wanted people everywhere, children, grandchildren, and seniors themselves, to understand that bedtime isn't just about closing your eyes. It's about protecting the body during its most vulnerable hours. In the months following Richard's passing, Emily began volunteering at a local senior center. She hosted small talks about sleep health, sharing her father's story. "My dad loved history, but in the end, his own history became a lesson," she told the group one evening. Seniors nodded in agreement, some with tears in their eyes as she explained how changing small habits, like eating lighter dinners, turning off screens an hour before bed, keeping a glass of water nearby, and never skipping medication, could save lives. One man in the audience, 74-year-old James Parker, raised his hand and said softly, "Emily, I've been doing all 4 of those things wrong. Maybe your dad just saved my life through you." Those words gave Emily the comfort she needed. Her father's story was no longer just about loss. It was about prevention and awareness. Richard's grandchildren also learned from this experience. Instead of mourning silently, they made Grandpa's nighttime rules and taped them to their grandmother's fridge to remind her of healthier habits. Even at their young age, they began to understand how the smallest choices can have the greatest consequences. This story is not meant to scare people, but to serve as a reminder. Age brings wisdom, but it also brings responsibility. The body changes after 70, and so should daily routines. Richard Thompson's peaceful passing was heartbreaking, but it turned into a wake-up call for countless others. If you are caring for an elderly parent, or if you are entering your golden years yourself, remember Richard's story. Avoid heavy meals late at night, turn off the screens before sleep, stay hydrated, and never skip the medications your doctor prescribed. These 4 simple steps may feel small, but they can mean the difference between losing precious time and gaining many more mornings with the people you love. Emily now ends every speech the same way, echoing her father's voice but with a new meaning. "I've lived through tougher times, sweetheart. And I want you to live through many more too."